Journey to Lemora, Chapter 22, Someone to Blame. The next few days we had returned to training. However, we couldn't help but notice the people's attitudes towards us had changed. Their hospitality was more of an obligation towards guardians, and not out of humble charity or goodwill. Ever since the Aloyan prince was captured, the tension was thick around us. Their guardian was killed by one of them. And although we are not from Lemora, we look exactly like the Fayelarians to them. Most were still kind and smiled when we were near, but there were still some who openly scowled and berated us under muttered breaths. For the most part, we ignored them. It wasn't until the burly Rajork mocked Amber in a lewd way that Nick lost all his composure. "Ahalar! Nikar!" Rajork spat, gesturing grotesquely. "You're the one who's trash," Nick roared back. The two of them came to blows, and Nick threw the first punch, making Rajork's dark green mohawk ripple. He retaliated and punched Nick hard in the stomach. There were screams from Amber, but many of the other male Fae surrounded the two of them, whooping and cheering like it was some kind of show. They were pummeling each other into the ground, and they weren't going to stop. Blood was oozing from both of their noses, and Shayla and I decided to step in. I shielded Nick into a bubble prison, and Shayla summoned vines to pull Rajork off of him. They both sat bruise-faced and wounded. It was hard to tell who got it worse. "What is the meaning of this?" the elder boomed, and everyone dropped to their knees, bowing. "Lestan, the outsider struck Rajork first," one of the onlookers called out, and Rajork smirked, the scar on his chin twisted with his lips. "Forgive Rajork! Banish the outsiders!" called out another. It became clear the fight was a setup, and this was their intention all along. "He only attacked after being provoked," Shayla snapped back at them, and I was grateful to have her on our side. The elder closed her eyes contemplatively, breathing in slowly. Everyone else stood completely still, waiting on bated breath. Then she opened them again when she came to a decision. "These are not our enemies. We are wasting time fighting amongst ourselves when the battle has yet to begin. Both parties are at fault, and both shall be punished accordingly." She said the verdict with conviction, and the crowd murmured and dispersed. Nick and Rajork were both sent back to the polls, where people threw mud at them. They were not to speak a word and had to remain there until sundown. It seemed an easy task at first, no different than the other night, but this time was much worse. The sun beat down on the two of them, and they stood there for hours. The posts were only wide enough for 1 foot, so they had to balance constantly, and eventually their muscles began to ache. Sweat drenched their hair, but neither complained, not wanting to seem weaker than the other. Showing off his magic skills, Nick conjured some water for himself to drink. Rajork watched, smacking his lips. Deciding he wouldn't be outdone, he summoned his forest familiar, who produced a water-filled fruit. They were still battling, in silence, up on the poles in the heat of the sun. Amber and I watched them from a distance. "Oh, boys, look at them having their measuring contest like it proves something. I turned him down already, and then he pulls this stunt?" Amber huffed, crossing her arms. "I thought you two were in a good place," I questioned her. "So did I, but we haven't really been able to have any space from each other either. It makes it weird," she murmured. "You know, he might not be doing this to impress you. He stood up for me before, and we both know he's not into me that way." As I said it, it stung a little still. Amber's angry face softened slightly. "He always fights for people, doesn't he? Maybe chivalry isn't dead. It's just inside of thick-headed football players," she grumbled, and I stifled a laugh. "He could have ruined our alliance with the Fayelarians, and our chance to train you as guardians," Anya growled suddenly, and we both turned and looked down at him. I never noticed him approach us, the pads on his paws silencing every step. It's going to be all right, isn't it? This was such a stupid thing to fight about, but even I feel the tension around the Fayelarians, I asked. Things aren't going well against the Umbra. They're upset their guardian is dead. Many of the Fayelarians wish to kill the Elorian prince out of revenge, but the Elder has decreed no one is to touch him. To do so now, while the Elorians have all the magic, would devastate us. They have no choice, so they are looking for someone else to punish, Hanu explained. But we haven't done anything to them. We agreed to help them. In fact, we're training and learning their language for them, and they want to blame us? Amber flared up. Shh, Amber, calm down, I said gently. The last thing we needed was another fight with them. They have yet to see the fruits of your labor, and they doubt your strength. Perhaps this display will be of some use after all, if he can manage to stay up, that is. Amber and I looked up at Nick, who was flushed with heat and sun exposure. The mud that was thrown on him was now dry and crumbling. We saw Nick swoon slightly, wobbling on top of his post. Rajork laughed wickedly, but he quickly silenced when he found himself thrown off balance. Then Rajork called his forest familiar again and wrapped a vine around his leg and the post, securing himself. Hey, isn't that cheating? Amber yelled, pointing at Rajork. I think it's expected, I reflected slowly, and the meaning of this particular punishment became clear. It wasn't just for shaming someone who'd done something wrong. They were supposed to demonstrate magical strength and perseverance. Nick then summoned his own forest familiar and concentrated on creating a vine for him to tether onto the pole. Rajork, however, had other plans. He summoned another vine and began to whip at Nick with it. The vine whip left a wicked welt on Nick's shoulder. He tried again to summon his own vines, but Rajork kept hitting him. There were angry welts up all of Nick's right arm and leg. Finally getting fed up, Nick summoned his water shield, which started raining on him from the inside. His wounds slowly started to heal themselves, and he looked stronger with every moment the shield was up. He couldn't hold this shield up for very long, as regular shields are exhausting to use, but it did the trick. He was recovered and ready to fight again. Healing shield? Did you know he could do that? I gasped, and Amber shook her head. Nick finally managed to summon his own vines, which wrapped around the pole. He straightened and broke off a vine, much like Shayla did when she made her vine arrows, except his was the length of a long lance. He thrust this new weapon at Rajork, who narrowly dodged the attack. Rajork pounded his chest with his fist and howled. He seemed to be thoroughly enjoying the challenge now. More onlookers began to surround them again, watching the battle. Nick attacked with the vine lance again, but Rajork's vines wrapped around it and flung the weapon away. Nick summoned more vines, which wrapped themselves along his arms, creating arm extensions. Rajork did the same, and they proceeded to wrestle each other, determined to knock the other off their post. The crowd cheered and leered at them. Even Amber and I joined in on the cheering. Nick noticed and worked even harder. Now he really is impressing us, I thought to myself. Nick and Rajork were very evenly matched, and both were reaching their limits. The day finally came to an end, and both Nick and Rajork collapsed onto the ground. To our surprise, they both laughed. Honest Jor, Rajork panted to Nick with a deep, rough voice in Fayelarian. You're pretty strong too, Nick panted, wiping the sweat from his brow. Nick held out his hand, and Rajork gave him a firm forearm handshake. They nodded with respect to each other and limped away into their hanging hammocks. Amber and I saw the exchange and merely shook our heads. I didn't understand how the fight sealed our friendship with the Fae, but it did. Amber and I brought food and water to Nick in his hammock. He was completely wiped out, but ate ravenously nonetheless. "Nick, what you did was so stupid. You don't have to defend me. I'm perfectly capable of defending myself," Amber yelled, and he was taken aback, swallowing hard on his food. "I know you are. You're both so amazing with magic. I didn't do this because I doubt you. I did it because I stand with you. I won't let them doubt us. Amber put a finger on his lips. He didn't need to explain more. "Thank you." "That was some incredible magic you did out there yourself," I exclaimed with a smile. "Yeah, no problem," Nick said, puffing out his chest, but winced when his right shoulder bumped the side of the hammock. We rehashed the whole encounter together, eating and laughing. It grew late, and we wished each other good night before sliding into our own hammocks to sleep. Hello, my name is Ella, and welcome to my channel. Here I'll be sharing with you my stories, artwork, animations. If you enjoy my content, please support me by clicking the like button, subscribing, sharing, or ringing the bell for notifications. Links to my website and social media are below. I will be releasing content in sequential order, so please check for new chapters each week.